Greetings and salutations, everyone. So Blizzcon is on its way, and that means we're going to get a bunch of news regarding World of Warcraft and what comes next. Now, this could go in many different ways, with announcing new patches, the next expansion, a new game, or a show entirely for Warcraft. Lord of the Clans, the animated show? There are a lot of things on the table, is what I'm getting at. Nothing concrete, but we've got some options here at least. And our only hint for what's to come at the moment, though, is Thrall, the current leader of the Orcs and the former warchief of the Horde, in his glorious Doomblade looking proud and happy. Not a lot to go on, but I can take a gander at what that exactly means for us and the people of Azeroth. It's important to remember that Jaina, Sarvang, and Sylvanas all appeared to represent Warcraft in previous BlizzCons, and they all did hold quite a substantial role in those announcements. Especially when they easily could have just had any of the dragon aspects represent Warcraft for Dragonflight. I think that this is quite deliberate in choosing Thrall to be the face of Warcraft this time around. So, why Thrall? Let's steer in the direction of a patch before we speculate on an expansion or other ideas. So in Dragonflight, the dragon aspects are having a rough time. They don't have their aspect powers, the Titans are on hold with them entirely, the Incarnates are gaining new powers, and they're about to target the new world tree of Yggdrasil for unknown reasons. With how dire things are getting, it would make sense to call on your best allies to regroup and defend the World Tree. Thrall defended the World Tree in the past during the events of the Third War, alongside Jaina and Tyrande Whisperwind and Malfurion. Plus, Thrall aided the dragon aspects back during the Cataclysm and was well regarded as their friend and ally. Thrall even represented the Black Dragonflight as an Earth Warder, since nobody at the time could exactly hold that position. Sorry, Rathian. So it would make sense to have Thrall rally the Horde and take the fight against the Incarnates, and their Primalist and Jarden allies, who are threatening his friends. It also makes a little bit of sense since Thrall is also a shaman, so you connect the dots, shamanism versus elements, or calming the elements, it just adds up pretty well. This would also be a means of atonement for the Horde's actions of aiding in the burning of Teldrassil, the Night Elves' former home, by defending their new home from these invaders. It wouldn't patch everything up in a neat and tiny bow, but it would do a lot in showing what the Horde is meant to represent. I would definitely push this more as a Horde thing and as an Alliance thing maybe in the background, as to not take away from this being a Night Elf themed storyline. I do think that there's a place for the Horde and Thrall in this defense, but I would tread carefully in not taking things away from Tyrande or Malfurion or the Night Elves. Basically just make this the Horde storyline while the Alliance gets something separate. Plus, this would be a great time to reintroduce Vol'jin into the story. You know, as a Valoa this time though. Since the Emerald Dream and Ardenweald are heavily connected, and it has been a bit since we've seen him last, as there was a time skip for about 2 to 3 years. I think it's been 2 years. It's been a bit. Maybe he's ready to hatch, so maybe Vol'jin would be a better Horde element to focus on rather than Thrall. Regardless, I do think it would be a very hyped moment if we see all of Azeroth come together in the defense of the Night Elves' new home by the end of Dragonflight. Alright, so there's also the chance that Thrall being the face of what's to be announced for Warcraft has nothing to do with the next patch or Dragonflight itself. Instead, it could very well be something for the next expansion, as that is definitely on the table, as it does seem like Dragonflight will be wrapping up somewhat soonish, though I could be wrong and we'll be getting 1 or 2 more big patches. Currently, we're on 10.1.5, where we deal with the Infinite Dragonflight attempting to give rise to Murozond, who I also don't think has been fully dealt with just yet, but that's a different video entirely. While they failed at that, Iridikron was successful in what he came along the ride for, and that was gathering the very dark and corrupted essence of Galakrond, the very proto-dragon that gave rise to the aspects so long ago, and gave rise to the horde of undead proto-dragons too. And Iridikron takes said relic, said to be more ancient than the original Dragon Soul, and leaves with it to gift to the Harbinger, whom will bring about the end of the Titan's reign on Azeroth, supposedly. With that, we see a silhouette of what is very likely to be Xal'Atath, the formerly imprisoned void entity trapped inside the Blade of the Black Empire, who's been roaming about the stars for a while now inside an elven body. The Harbinger could be Xal'Atath, whom I believe to be one of the 5 old gods that was trapped on Azeroth. Or the Harbinger is Queen Azshara, who similarly escaped to seek out a throne of some kind, finally done with serving the old gods and demons, and she did this through a portal in the same vein as Iridikron and Xal'Atath did. My full bet is that it's Xal'Atath, she's the Harbinger, but Azshara could be aiding her just the same as Iridikron is. Either way, Iridikron is seemingly leaving the war against dragonkind to his 2 siblings, while he plots with Xal'Atath and the other void entities to bring about the downfall of the Titans somehow, with the essence that Yogg-Saron aided in creating. This will either be the very climax of Dragonflight, or this is setting up what comes after the defense of the World Tree in the next expansion, where Iridikron could be a constant threat in the same vein as Garrosh was in Warlords of Draenor, or Gul'dan was in Legion. This is where we must deal with the return of the Void, or the return of the Titans themselves, and maybe the Betrayer too. Please though. Either way, Iridikron is certainly setting the stage for what comes next, either in a patch or a full-on expansion. So where does Thrall fit into all of this? Well, perhaps Thrall is leading an expedition or the fight against these threats. Maybe the elements are calling out to him to seek out a new landmass of some kind for the Horde and the Orcs to use, or maybe rescue. He certainly has experiences in going across the seas to new lands and new worlds. More than once, really. Maybe something terrible happens with the dragon aspects and it falls to mortals like him, who has a heavy connection with them and is friends with them, to save them. It definitely feels like there's a trail being left behind for us to solve, and they did say that they wanted storylines in Warcraft to have a steeper connection than before. It was Thrall who brought the downfall of Deathwing, whom nearly brought about the end of days through his cataclysms. Quite possibly we will see the world of Azeroth forever changed, or already changed by returning back to Kalimdor or the Eastern Kingdoms, which has certainly had to have changed in the past 5 or so years since the Fourth War concluded, or whatever happens with Iridikron, the Harbinger, and the Titans, etc. in the conclusion of Dragonflight's storyline. We know already that the clans of Azeroth, including Thrall, who is the chieftain and leader of the Frostwolves, and representative of the Orcs in general on the Horde, all of which were reinstated with the Kosh'harg, and many of these clans are already moving on to Azeroth as their new home, so it would make a lot of sense to showcase just how much the Orc clans have grown within this time span. With Thrall in the head of it all in Kalimdor, or maybe a new land entirely, separated from Durotar. Although Durotar itself is already healing, so I doubt that. But plenty of the northern and middle parts of Kalimdor already belong to most of the Horde, so I would think it wiser to focus on that. With all the talks of the return of Azshara, Iridikron's threats, about the Void and the war against the Titans, who are very likely do not care about any of us and just their world of Azeroth, perhaps Thrall is forced to don the role of Warchief once again to take a fight against a Lightbent alliance and face down against Turalyon. There's a lot that can be next after Dragonflight, but it's definitely not a lot to go on, and I will admit, but with Thrall and these many loose hanging threats, it can really be hard to tell or say just what is going to happen next. These are just my guesses. But if Thrall is on the head of it all, count me excited and pumped. He's one of my favorite characters after all, next to Rexxar. But what do you guys think? Why do you think Thrall is the face of Warcraft for BlizzCon? Is he returning as War Chief? Is he needed once again to take down yet another earthy, voidy dragon like the lovely Eridikron? Do you think this is a sign for a revamp? Or something else? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. I'm personally hoping for some kind of boat or ship system on par with the garrison or something to go along with this, if this is some kind of South Seas styled expansion. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you'd like to talk even more, join us on the Discord where we talk about all kinds of things and stuff and all that. You can also support me on my Patreon like these amazing folks here. It helps me out a ton to bring these kinds of videos and others. But until next time, my friends,